After returning from 3 years of working abroad, my fiancé invited me to join his company. But just a few days after joining, an assistant brought me a liability agreement to sign. I frowned. What does this mean? The assistant rolled her eyes at me. Shouldn't you take responsibility for the trouble you caused yourself? I thought she had mistaken me for someone else, so I patiently explained. I just got here. Haven't even touched a single project yet. How could I possibly have caused any trouble? When I refused to sign, the assistant slammed the agreement on the desk outright, crossed her arms, and glared down at me. Just sign when you're told to. Why so much backtalk? I couldn't be bothered with her and directly called Liam. To my surprise, Liam impatiently replied, Jessie got into some trouble the other day, just cover for her. I'm warning you, Olivia, don't pull your spoiled rich girl act. She's the daughter of our group's chairman. If you offend her, we'll both be out of jobs. Hearing this, I looked up at the haughty woman standing before me. How come I didn't know my father suddenly had another daughter like this? I flipped through that liability agreement, which stated that due to my leaking the project's core data and causing losses to the company, I was willing to take full responsibility. That's quite a big accusation to pin on me. Back when I first returned from abroad, Liam enthusiastically invited me to work at his company. With the wedding date approaching, I saw this as a final opportunity to assess his character and gladly accepted. I never expected he wanted me to be Jessica Miller's scapegoat. On the phone, Liam probably realized his tone had been too harsh earlier, so he softened his voice to persuade me. Liv, I'm doing this for our future together. Jess is the chairman's daughter, her record must stay spotless. But you're different. You're new here. Taking some unfair treatment is no big deal. I interrupted him. Liam, I'd advise you to think twice before making any decisions. Without waiting for his response, I hung up the phone. Just then, Jessica suddenly threw a cup of ice water over my head. The freezing liquid trickled down my hair, soaking through my white blouse and sending a shiver down my spine. She looked at me with utter contempt. Someone who graduated from a third-rate overseas university like you would probably still be flipping burgers in some fast food joint if it weren't for Liam. Now when we ask you to contribute something to the company, you're still making excuses. Let me tell you, if you don't sign today, and the partners start asking questions, once my father finds out, nobody can protect you. Never in my life has anyone dared treat me like this. And she actually called my MBA from Stanford, a third-rate degree. A surge of anger rose in my chest, and without hesitation, I grabbed the still steaming cup of coffee beside me and splashed it across Jessica's face. Ah! Jessica screamed in pain, clutching her scalded face. The office instantly erupted into chaos. Everyone stared at me in shock, whispering among themselves. That's Liam's fiancé who just returned from abroad? How dare she? Offending the chairman's daughter right off the bat. Such poor judgment. She's in for a rough time. This is bad, really bad. Something terrible is about to happen. Given this situation, if I didn't know my dad had voluntarily gotten a vasectomy after I was born, I genuinely suspect Jessica was his secret love child. But earlier I hadn't looked Jessica in the eye properly. Now that I examine her carefully, her face seems strangely familiar. Jessica wiped the coffee off her face with a tissue, trembling with rage. Olivia Stone, have you lost your mind? Do you realize what you're doing? I looked at her coldly. Of course I know what I'm doing. I'm teaching basic human decency to someone who made a mistake and still tries to shift the blame. Do you know who I am? Jessica screamed. I sneered. I don't care who you are. Here, you're nothing. Liam happened to walk in from outside and immediately changed expressions upon seeing Jessica's disheveled state. Without even glancing at me, he rushed straight to Jessica, cupping her face in his hands as he nervously examined her with great care. Jessie, are you okay? Are you hurt? That cautious tone was something I'd never heard him use with me before. Even when I was sick with a fever, he'd just casually say, drink more water. Jessica looked at him with teary eyes and sobbed pitifully. Liam, my face hurts so much. Does Olivia want to ruin my looks? As she spoke, she burrowed into Liam's embrace. Liam stiffened all over, his face actually showing a hint of delight as he hurriedly wrapped his arms tightly around her. It looks like they're the real couple here. Liam turned his head and yelled at me. Olivia, are you insane? Apologize to Jessie right now. I didn't move, just glared coldly at him. Liam, she threw the drink at me first. Why should I be the one apologizing? Liam grew even more furious and pointed at my face, cursing. You hurt Jessie and still have the nerve to say such things. I must have been blind. How could I ever fall for a vicious woman like you? Evil? So in his heart, our relationship had long been a burden to him. At this moment, I feel both relieved and regretful. Relieved that I never revealed my true identity to him. When we were together, I only told him my family was well off, letting him think I was just an ordinary rich girl. That gave me the chance to see his true colors. What I regret is that before going overseas for work, I actually recommended him to my father to be the branch manager. I was so sure back then, telling my dad with confidence that Liam was talented and trustworthy. Now that I think about it, it's like slapping my own face. If that's the case, Liam, we should break up. I picked up my bag and was ready to leave, but Liam grabbed my arm in a rage, snatching that liability agreement from the table. Olivia, you think I'm scared of your little game? I'm telling you, since you splashed Jesse, this isn't over. And as for this agreement, if you don't sign it today, don't even think about walking out that door. Perhaps because I'd just been drenched with ice water, I felt a terrible headache coming on. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him anymore, so I reached out and took the agreement. After signing my name in the final signature block, I threw it right back at him. Liam didn't expect me to be so straightforward. He froze for several seconds before snapping out of it, bending down to pick up the agreement from the floor. I had just stepped into the elevator when I heard his furious roar from behind. Olivia, how dare you sign Jesse's name? Get back here now. The elevator doors slowly closed, shutting out Liam's furious shouts. The family car was already waiting downstairs. I slumped wearily into the seat and instructed the driver. Take me home, I said, and Robert Miller, the chauffeur, nodded as the car slowly pulled away. My head was still throbbing. I closed my eyes and, before I knew it, fell asleep. When I woke up, however, I found that the car hadn't stopped anywhere near my house. It was parked outside a 5-star hotel instead. Robert had worked for my family for 30 years. In my heart, he was like family, which was why I felt safe enough to sleep while he was driving. But at this moment, an ominous premonition surged in my heart. I hurriedly asked, Robert, weren't you supposed to take me home? Why did we come here? Robert turned to look at me, his face no longer wearing the respectful expression I was used to, but instead a malicious coldness that chilled me to the bone. Forgive me, miss, he said. As someone who watched you grow up, I feel it's my duty to teach you that your actions have consequences. Looking at this face before me, I suddenly understood why Jessica's face had seemed so familiar. So she was Robert Miller's daughter. I reached into my bag for my phone, intending to call 911, but Robert was quicker, snatching the bag from me in an instant. Don't waste your energy, miss, he said. Glaring at him fiercely, I demanded, Robert, aren't you afraid my father will find out about this? He snorted coldly. The chairman has been preoccupied with overseas expansion these past few years, spending barely any time domestically. When would he have time to bother with trivial matters at a branch company? As for you, dare to harm my daughter, and you must pay the price. With that, he opened the car door, grabbed my arm, and forcibly dragged me out of the vehicle. I tried to break free, but Robert's strength was surprisingly immense. Fortunately, I seized the opportunity to secretly press the emergency button on my watch. What exactly do you want? I tried to clarify my current situation so I could prepare countermeasures in advance, but Robert wasn't having any of it. Without saying a word, he led me to a private booth and shoved me inside with force. The room was hazy with smoke. A corpulent man sat at the head seat while Liam fawned over him with a sycophantic smile, offering toasts. Robert bowed obsequiously to the man at the head of the table. Mr. Harrison, I brought the person as you requested. Jessica stood up triumphantly, pointing at me and shouting, Mr. Harrison, she's the one who leaked the project data. I specially brought her here to apologize to you. Mr. Harrison? It suddenly came to me, he's the CEO of our company's biggest competitor, Charles Harrison, in his 50s, divorced twice with an extremely bad reputation. Haha, Miss Miller went to a lot of trouble. Charles Harrison put down his glass, sizing me up from head to toe. So this is the woman who leaked the data? Not bad looking. He stood up and walked towards me. Sweetheart, do you have any idea how much money our company lost because of your data leak? I gave a cold laugh. When did I ever leak any data? Jessica pulled out that liability agreement, still acting tough at this point. Don't forget, you've already signed this. I glanced at it. Sure enough, it was the document I'd just signed. Except in the signature field, I'd clearly written the name Jessica Miller. Now it read Olivia Stone. You forged the signature. Forged? Liam sneered. Olivia, don't make baseless accusations. You signed this yourself. There's surveillance footage to prove it. There were indeed cameras in the office, but they could only capture the motion of me signing, not what I actually wrote. Mr. Harrison, you see, she's completely unrepentant. Just earlier at the company, she even threw coffee all over me. Absolutely shameless behavior. Jessica added fuel to the fire with her words. Charles Harrison looked at me and smiled meaningfully. Pretty little thing, since you've made a mistake, you'll have to face the consequences. Charles Harrison's gaze roamed over me shamelessly, that look making me sick to my stomach. Miss Stone is truly young and beautiful, even more radiant than the photos Liam showed me. He licked his lips. Liam immediately bowed and scraped, saying, Mr. Harrison, Olivia is young and doesn't know better. She made a mistake this time. You're a magnanimous man, so please don't stoop to her level. Why not let her accompany you for a few drinks tonight to make up for it? That bastard Liam, not only did he make me take the fall, but he also wants to hand me over to this disgusting old man. Charles Harrison picked up his wine glass and walked over to me. Be smart, little beauty. As long as you please me tonight, the matter of compensation can be swept under the rug. Dream on. I shoved him away and immediately turned to bolt for the door. 2 bodyguards instantly blocked my escape. I spun around to glare at Liam, fury burning in my voice as I shouted, "Liam, have you no humanity? After 3 years together, this is how you treat me?" Liam sneered coldly, "Feelings? Compared to my future, feelings are worthless. Besides, you're the one who leaked trade secrets, and now you dare shift blame?" "I didn't. The evidence is irrefutable. How dare you still try to deny it?" He gestured to the bodyguard at the door, "Bring her here." I struggled desperately but was pinned firmly to the chair. "Liam, Jessica deceived you. I'm Richard White's real daughter. If you dare lay a hand on me, my father will make sure you pay for it." The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into roaring laughter. Liam patted my cheek, looking at me as if I were a clown. "Stop joking. Mr. White's surname is White, yours is Stone. How could you possibly be his daughter? Besides, we see Jesse riding in Mr. White's car to and from work every day. Who else would get that treatment besides his daughter? Since you insist on choosing the hard way, don't blame us for being impolite." Liam gripped my chin and forced a glass of alcohol into my mouth. "Drink it." The icy liquor poured into my mouth in one go. I shook my head desperately as the liquid spilled from the corners of my lips, soaking my shirt front. Yet Liam still wouldn't let me go, forcing one glass after another down my throat. My consciousness began to blur as my stomach churned violently. "Enough." I pushed him away with all my strength. Liam grabbed the entire bottle of liquor, pried open my mouth. "Not drinking? Then we'll pour it down your throat." The strong alcohol burned like fire down my throat, and my world began to spin out of control. Charles Harrison watched my pitiful state, excitement gleaming in his eyes. "Good, very good. Now this is getting interesting." Seeing I no longer had strength to resist, Liam took out a room key from his pocket and handed it to Charles Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, room 1208, specially prepared for you." "Ha, you've got the right attitude, Liam. A bright future ahead." Charles Harrison patted Liam on the shoulder. I felt someone grab me by the arms and drag me toward the door. I wanted to scream, to struggle, but the alcohol had rendered my body unresponsive. Despair washed over me like a torrential tide. Just then, the private room's door was kicked open with a loud bang. A familiar voice roared, "You bastards! Dare to lay a hand on my daughter. Do you have a death wish?" My father appeared at the doorway with David, the group's vice president, and over a dozen bodyguards clad in black suits. His gaze was colder than I'd ever seen before. The color instantly drained from every face in the room. With the last ounce of my strength, I turned my gaze toward the door. Though my vision was blurred, I knew the person I'd relied on most since childhood had finally arrived. My father rushed to my side. Seeing me drenched and delirious, the fury in his eyes burned so intensely that it felt almost tangible. He stripped off his suit jacket and wrapped it tightly around me. "Dad," I managed to whisper with my fading strength before collapsing into his arms. David waved his hand, and the bodyguards immediately pinned everyone firmly to the ground. Liam looked incredulously at my father, then at me, muttering, "How is this possible? Olivia's last name is Stone. How could she be Mr. White's daughter?" My father sneered, "What? Can't my daughter take her mother's surname?" Finally realizing that I was Mr. White's daughter, Liam's face instantly blanched, and he fell to his knees with a thud. "Mr. White, I didn't know. I truly didn't know she was your daughter." Jessica and her father also collapsed to the ground, their faces filled with despair. Robert explained in a trembling voice, "Chairman, I didn't know." "Didn't know?" My father glared at him angrily. "You've worked by my side for 30 years, and you didn't know what my daughter looks like?" Robert's face turned ashen, unable to utter another word. Charles Harrison was even more terrified, his face pale as clay, the lustful gleam in his eyes now completely replaced by sheer panic. "Mr. White, this is all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" My father held me in his arms, the murderous glint in his eyes sending chills down the spine. "You got my daughter drunk and tried to do God knows what to her, and you call that a misunderstanding?" Liam desperately kowtowed. "Mr. White, it's all my fault. I was blinded by greed. Please spare me this once." "Spare you?" My father with a cold laugh. "You nearly destroyed my daughter, and you're asking me to spare you?" Only then did Jessica realize what was happening. She burst into tears, pleading, "Please, Miss Stone and I are colleagues. Please have mercy on me." David approached my father and murmured, "Chairman, should we arrange for the young lady to go to the hospital first?" My dad nodded. "Lock down the hotel and call the police. None of those involved here today will get away." The ambulance arrived. I was lifted onto a stretcher, my consciousness flickering intermittently under the influence of alcohol. Through blurred vision, I realized my father hadn't followed. He was staying at the scene to personally deal with those who had hurt me. In the private room, Liam had completely broken down. He knelt on the ground, his forehead bruised and bleeding, pleading in a hoarse voice, "Mr. White, I was wrong. It was Robert and his daughter who deceived me. I truly didn't know Olivia was your daughter. I beg you. We were together for 3 years. My feelings for her were genuine. I was just blinded. I thought she had truly betrayed the company." Liam's pleas grew increasingly desperate as he struggled desperately to crawl toward my father. My father kicked him away with that single blow, putting all his strength into it. Liam crashed directly into the wall, spitting out a mouthful of blood. You didn't know she was my daughter, so you thought you could just hand her over to another man? Liam's eyes widened as he shook his head desperately. No, Mr. White, I didn't mean to harm her. I just wanted her to apologize. I never intended to. Never thought about it? My father stepped up to Charles Harrison. Then what's this old bastard doing here? Charles Harrison trembled in terror, his pants thoroughly soaked. Mr. White, I just came to discuss cooperation. I didn't do anything. My father stared at the room key on the table, the murderous intent in his eyes nearly overflowing. Room 1208. You've prepared quite thoroughly indeed. Liam was utterly despairing now. He knew any explanation would be useless. My father shifted his gaze to Robert. This old subordinate who'd served him for 30 years was now trembling like a sieve. Robert, my father said, his voice heavy with sorrow and disappointment. You saved my life back then. Since that day, I've always treated you as a brother. I gave you the chance to get your daughter into the company, even turning a blind eye when she used the White surname. Is this how you repay me? Is this how you treat my daughter? Chairman, Robert's voice trembled, his face ashen, unable to utter another word. He knew it was all over. Finally, my father's gaze rested on Jessica. The woman who had impersonated his daughter was now collapsed on the ground, her eyes filled with despair. Pretending to be my daughter, harming my daughter. Very well. Jessica suddenly crawled over and clung to my father's leg. Mr. White, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. It was all my father's doing. He said if I could marry Liam, our family would soar to great heights. I'm a victim too. My father kicked her aside. A victim? His voice was terrifyingly cold. When you watched my daughter being forced to drink, did it ever occur to you that she was a victim too? Jessica wept in despair, her makeup completely ruined. The bodyguard approached and whispered, Chairman, the police will be here soon. My dad nodded and glanced at these people. Tonight, not a single one involved is to be spared. Hearing this, Liam knew that with the White family's influence, his life was thoroughly ruined. In the hospital room, the sharp smell of disinfectant hung in the air. Leaning against the hospital bed, I held David's phone in my hand, the screen displaying the real-time surveillance footage from the private room. Those people were still kneeling on the ground. Liam's forehead was already bruised and bleeding, covered in bloodstains. Robert collapsed in the corner, utterly broken. Jessica lay on the ground, crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. Watching this scene, a surge of dark satisfaction rose within me. Dad, hand the phone to Jessica. My father walked over to Jessica and passed her the phone. Jessica trembled as she took the phone, her voice choked with emotion. Miss Stone. I spoke slowly, my voice calm. Jessica, after recognizing you as Robert's daughter, I suddenly remembered something. Do you remember? Over a decade ago, when you used to live in our backyard, you always liked stealing my toys and dresses. A startled sob came through the phone. Jessica's pupils suddenly constricted as she froze in place. She remembered all those deliberately forgotten memories. After getting caught, you'd just cry and claim I'd given you all those things, I continued. My mom took pity on you and never pressed the matter. Jessica's sobs grew louder as she frantically shook her head, desperate to deny something. My voice grew increasingly icy. After all these years, I didn't expect you still hadn't shaken off your thieving habit. Not only stealing project data, but trying to steal my entire life. You and your father, rotten to the core. Those words became the final straw that broke her. Jessica collapsed to the floor in hysterical sobs, her wails utterly heart-wrenching. She remembered her childhood self, that girl who was always envious of other people's children. Upon hearing this, Robert's face grew even more ashen. He remembered that kind-hearted lady from back then, recalled her leniency toward her own daughter. Yet this was how they repaid her. Liam had heard it too. He stared at Jessica wide-eyed. So this was how she had always been. So he had been deceived so thoroughly. My father picked up the phone again, his voice filled with concern. Liv, you should rest now. Let me handle the rest. No need, Dad, I said softly, leaning against the pillow. I want to see them pay for this with my own eyes. In the private room, the people who heard my words were trembling in fear. Jessica suddenly crawled forward, crying into the phone, Olivia, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Since childhood, I've envied you for having such wonderful parents and so many beautiful clothes. But I'm a victim too. It was my father who forced me. He said as long as I married Liam, our family could turn things around. Listening to her words, I felt nothing but disgust. Even at this point, she was still shirking responsibility. Liam finally realized what was happening. He glared at Jessica angrily. So you deliberately pretended to be Mr. White's daughter just to get close to me and sabotage my relationship with Olivia? Jessica shook her head in panic. Liam, no, I truly care for you. Truly? Liam sneered. You can't even be honest about who you are, and you dare speak of truth? Watching them tear into each other, I felt a surge of malicious satisfaction. The police arrived swiftly at the scene after receiving my father's emergency call. Charles Harrison, Liam, the Miller father and daughter, along with all their accomplice bodyguards, were brought under control. I thought the matter was over, yet 3 days later, Harrison's Anhua group took the first shot. A maliciously edited video suddenly went viral online. In the video, I appear disheveled, charmingly drunk as I get close to Charles Harrison. The scene so suggestive it sparks endless speculation. The clips of me being forced to drink and struggling to resist were all edited out. Anhua Group's PR statements flooded the media. Olivia Stone sold her body to steal trade secrets, then turned around and bit the hand that fed her when it didn't work. White Group heiress's chaotic private life exposed. She set up a trap to blackmail business elites. The true face of a socialite. Behind the scenes lies filthy business deals. Lying in the hospital bed, I stared at the venomous comments on my phone screen, my fingers trembling. This woman is disgusting. She might look decent, but she's anything but. Rich girls are all like this. They'd do anything for money. Mr. Harrison is the real victim here, falling prey to that woman's schemes. Every comment stabbed at my heart like a knife. I remembered the humiliation of that night, the disgusting touch of Charles Harrison's hands. My stomach churned violently. White Group's stock price plummeted immediately, and the company's phone lines were flooded with calls. My father stood in the hospital room, his face ashen. His phone kept ringing non-stop, all calls from reporters. Chairman, the company's stock price has dropped 30%. David rushed in to report. I looked at my father, overwhelmed by a wave of immense guilt. Because of me, the entire White Group had been dragged down. Dad, I'm sorry. My voice choked with emotion. My father walked over and gently stroked my hair. Liv, this isn't your fault. It was Charles Harrison trying to short our White Group by suppressing you. Cold fury flashed in his eyes. He thought this could bring us down. I suddenly sat up straight, an idea flashing through my mind. Dad, it's our turn to strike back. My father froze momentarily before admiration lit up his eyes. Liv, what are you thinking? A press conference. I wiped away my tears. We'll reveal the whole truth publicly. The next day, White Group held a press conference. The venue was packed with journalists, camera flashes flickering nonstop. I sat on the podium, facing dozens of cameras. Dear members of the press, today I'd like to clarify some facts. The large screen lit up, and the first video began to play. Gasps erupted from the audience. This is the complete footage of Robert Miller personally drugging me into unconsciousness and kidnapping me to the hotel. Immediately after, the second video played. It showed the entire process of me being forcibly plied with alcohol in the private room, with Liam handing over the room card. The reporters below the stage were struck speechless with shock. This is the full account of how I was victimized in that private room. Please see for yourselves. Who is the real victim here? The third video segment was the main event. Jessica Miller's chat records with Charles Harrison Trading Company data were displayed line by line, accompanied by transfer records. $1 million in exchange for the project's core data. This is the true face of the so-called business elite Charles Harrison. The venue erupted in uproar. Reporters frantically clicked their shutters. This was undoubtedly the biggest news scoop of the year. The press conference video instantly went viral across the internet. Public opinion online underwent a complete reversal. Oh my God, Miss Stone is the real victim. That beast Charles Harrison is simply inhuman. The Anhua Group is utterly despicable. How dare they slander the victim like this? White Group's stock price rebounded strongly while Anhua Group's shares began to plummet. I sat in the office, watching the stock price curve of Anhua Group on my computer screen, a cold smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Dad, it's time to reel in the net. Over the next 3 days, White Group launched a lightning-fast commercial siege. Anhua Group's partners terminated contracts one after another, banks withdrew loans, and suppliers cut off deliveries. Charles Harrison, the once arrogant business elite, could only watch helplessly as his commercial empire completely collapsed within 3 days. On the third evening, Anhua Group declared bankruptcy. I was drinking tea when I received the news. The tea tasted slightly bitter at first, but left a sweet aftertaste. The war Charles Harrison had provoked ended in his complete downfall. Faced with an overwhelming mountain of irrefutable evidence, the court swiftly delivered its verdict. Charles Harrison was sentenced to 20 years in prison, convicted on multiple charges including kidnapping, corporate espionage, defamation, and attempted rape. Robert Miller was sentenced to 10 years in prison for kidnapping. Jessica Miller was sentenced to 15 years in prison for fraud, corporate espionage, and defamation, and was required to return all illegal gains. Liam Carter was sentenced to 7 years in prison for gross misconduct and complicity. On the day of the verdict, I sat in the visitors' gallery, watching as the judge read out each charge one by one. With each name called, a weight lifted from my heart. When Charles Harrison was taken away, he glanced back at me. Those eyes that had once leered at me now held nothing but despair. Jessica's sobs were heart-wrenching. When Liam was finally led away, his eyes brimmed with nothing but regret. He wanted to say something, but I had already turned and walked away. After the storm subsided, I officially assumed the position of general manager at the branch company. The first thing I did was convene a meeting with all staff. Starting today, our company values competence over connections. I stood on the stage, my voice echoing throughout the entire conference room. The employees below chattered among themselves. Some were excited, while others were worried. Those who have the ability will rise. For those hoping to cut corners, forget about it. Applause erupted, growing increasingly fervent. Months later, Liam's parents came to find me. Liam's mother immediately knelt down upon meeting me. "Olivia, please forgive Liam." I quickly helped her up. "Mrs. Carter, please don't do this." Liam's father handed me a letter. Liam wrote this himself. He says he was wrong, truly wrong. I took the letter, my emotions in turmoil. Once, how I had longed to receive a love letter from Liam. Now, I've received his letter of confession. "Olivia, for the sake of all these years we've known each other, give Liam another chance," Mrs. Carter pleaded through tears. I shook my head. "Mrs. Carter, some things, once gone, are gone forever." Returning home, I opened the letter. It was long. Liam had written about every detail from our first meeting to our romance. He wrote about how nervous I was during our first date that I spilled coffee. He wrote about how we watched a movie together, and I was so moved that I cried. He wrote about how after we fought, I sulked and ignored him, and he waited outside my building all night. Every word told me he regretted it. "Olivia, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know, losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. If time could turn back, I would never let Jessica get close to me, much less hurt you. I'm willing to spend the rest of my life making amends, just give me one chance." As I finished reading the letter, my tears fell, not for Liam, but for the version of myself who had once loved him so deeply. I walked over to the shredder and fed the letter into it. The machine hummed as the white paper turned to confetti. The Olivia of the past died completely in that very moment. In the evening, I declined the driver's offer to take me home and walked back alone. The sun was setting as cars streamed down the street. I stepped into a flower shop where the shopkeeper greeted me warmly. "Miss, what flowers would you like to buy?" "Sunflowers," I said. "Sunflowers represent rebirth and hope," the shop owner replied with a smile. I nodded and walked out of the flower shop with the bouquet in my arms. On the way, I ran into Sarah, a former colleague from my old company. "Director Stone," she exclaimed as she ran over excitedly, "you're our idol now." I smiled and said, "Don't say that. I just did what I ought to do. You have no idea, everyone at the company is talking about you nowadays. They say you're a truly formidable businesswoman." "Strong woman?" I shook my head. "I'm just an ordinary woman who refuses to be bullied." Back home, I placed the sunflowers in a vase. Their golden petals shimmered under the light, just like how I felt inside. I no longer need to prove anything, nor proclaim anything to anyone. When I can peacefully savor this moment of serenity, my new life has already begun. The phone rang. It was Dad calling. "Liv, the company's stock price has gone up again." "Yeah," I responded indifferently. "Oh, and there are quite a few promising young people who'd like to meet you." I smiled and said, "Dad, I don't want to date anyone." "That makes sense. Focusing on your career first. Matters of the heart can wait." After hanging up the phone, I gazed at the night scene outside the window. The city lights shone brightly, each lamp representing a family, a story. And my story has only just begun. As for the dust of yesterday, it can no longer stir even the faintest ripple in my heart. I, Olivia Stone, have come back to life. The end.